John Wayne Gacy. The dead won't bother you. It's the living that you should worry about. John Wayne Gacy Jr., born March 17, 1942. Gacy was raised by an abusive, alcoholic father who referred to him as Sissy, and a passive mother. He was close to his sisters and his mother, who called him Johnny. After attending 4 different high schools, Gacy dropped out before completing his senior year and left his family heading west. After running out of money in Las Vegas, Nevada, he worked long enough to earn money to travel back home to Chicago. Without returning to high school, he enrolled in and eventually graduated from Northwestern Business College. A management trainee position with the Nunn-Bush Shoe Company followed shortly after graduation, and in 1964, Gacy transferred to Springfield, Illinois. There, he met co-worker Malin Myers, and they married in September 1964. He became active in local Springfield organizations, joining the Gacys and rising to vice president of Springfield Chapter by 1965. Gacy would later become involved in political activism, construction, and several other fields, all the while racking up minor criminal charges. In 1975, Gacy created the character Pogo the Clown, which he used to support himself. His habit of wearing the costume at charity events and parties later led him to being nicknamed the Killer Clown. During this time, his involvement in politics eventually landed him clearance by the US Secret Service. Shortly thereafter, he would begin his murders. He started with a young juvenile named Tim McCoy, whom he allegedly killed in self-defense. He soon murdered a co-worker named John Butkovich. After many years of murdering, Gacy was eventually apprehended in Des Plaines following the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Peast, who was last seen with Gacy. Police had obtained a search warrant to search Gacy's home, where they discovered a powerful odor and numerous items belonging to other missing young men. According to Gacy's confession with the police, he would pick up Caucasian male runaways or male prostitutes in their mid-teens to early 20s from the Chicago Greyhound bus station or off the streets. Afterwards, he would take them back to his house by either promising them money for sex, offering them a job with his construction company, or simply grabbing them by force. Once they got back to his house, he would handcuff them or tie them up in another way after intoxicating them with alcohol or knocking them out with chloroform. He would torture them in various ways, such as using a fire poker on them, dripping melted candle wax on their bodies, repeatedly drowning them in his bathtub, or by placing them in a homemade rack. As a show of dominance, he would urinate on his victims. One of his most infamous ways of binding his victims was convincing them to allow him to handcuff them under the pretense that it was a magic trick. Gacy would often stick paper towels or clothing, even their own underwear, in their mouths to muffle their screams, causing them to fatally asphyxiate. He would also kill his victims by strangling them with rope or a board as he sexually assaulted them with sex toys, then buried the bodies in his crawl space. Periodically, Gacy would pour lime in the crawl space to hasten the decomposition of the bodies. 3 victims were disposed of off the property by being dropped into the Des Plaines River. When he killed his first victim, Timothy McCoy, he stabbed him in the chest with a kitchen knife instead of asphyxiating him. Authorities then suspected Gacy of murder and would soon obtain a second search warrant. The second search would target the crawlspace in which police ripped up the floorboards and began to dig into the earth of the crawlspace. During the search, police found human bones buried in the soil of the crawlspace, and at that point they placed Gacy under arrest for murder. Gacy would admit to 25 to 30 murders in the 1970s. When police searched his home, the remains of at least 29 people were found buried in various places. The other remaining victims were found in the Des Plaines River. During his trial, and in order to lessen his sentence, Gacy began telling officials and prosecutors that he had an alter ego personality named Jack, who was responsible for the murders. Psychiatric evaluation proved the claim to be false. Later on, in an interview on death row shortly before his execution, Gacy claimed himself to be the 34th victim, as he was innocent and had no involvement with the murders and subsequent burials. Gacy claimed that his employees set him up. This proved to be false, as he had already claimed responsibility for the murders of the young men years prior. It is reported that Gacy killed 33 young men between 1972 and 1978. He is also known to have raped 2 males of the same age, one in 1968 and one in May 1978, both of whom were left alive. The 9 unidentified victims were all buried in individual graves with headstones reading, "We are remembered." Gacy was later found guilty of his crimes and sentenced to execution by lethal injection at Stateville Prison in Crest Hill, Illinois, on May 10, 1994. When asked whether he had any last words during his execution, he reportedly snarled, "Kiss my ass." He was then executed.